What is the most horrifying fact you know? At any time one of the proteins in your brain can misfold and cause a prion disease and we don't know why. Ducks become cannibals due to boredom. Of all ducking reasons. They can only be stopped by cutting off their mouths. Edit. 1 in 50 of us is walking around with a brain aneurysm. It just hasn't ruptured. Surgery predates anesthesia. Aneurysms can have no symptoms. And can erupt at any time. It's awful. They're the silent killer. There are tons of shoes near the Titanic. The reason for this is that once the ship hit the bottom of the ocean, corpses rained down around the wreckage. The Tamils who live on the east coast of Sri Lanka are fishermen. For months after the 2004 tsunami, the people along the coast refused to eat fish for fear of eating an animal that might have eaten human remains. It was one of the more disconcerting things I learned when I was there in 2005. On the torture rack. Additionally, if muscle fibers are stretched excessively, they lose their ability to contract, rendering them ineffective. One gruesome aspect of being stretched too far on the rack is the loud popping noises made by snapping cartilage, ligaments or bones. Every time I think of this I get freaked out. It would probably feel really good until it didn't. As a geology student I just learned that we are losing more topsoil than what is being produced. Soil takes at least 2,000 years to produce efficiently and usually at 10,000 years for some parts of the world. Soil is what sustains us, our animals and life on Earth. It's just as important as sunlight and water. After the atomic bomb was dropped there were some people who were close enough to have their faces melted but not killed. Babies in the womb can be startled and cry. However, there is no air, as their lungs and airways are filled with amniotic fluid until birth, and thus no sound. So babies are in there, silently screaming and sobbing. If they get scared in the womb, nobody can hear you scream. Toddlers and Tiaras is still a show, with a new episode scheduled for tonight. You receive the death penalty for armed robbery in Sudan. But the scary part is that the official death penalty for armed robbery in Sudan is crucifixion. Edit. For those curious, this is the penalty in North Sudan. I should have been a bit more clear. Generally, the crucifixion is held after the execution to display the offender's body as a form of intimidation to deter people from committing the crime. That being said, equally disturbing forms of capital punishment such as stoning women for religious crimes, hanging, and retributive sentences carried out in the same manner of which someone caused death are all legal. Female hyenas have a pseudo-penis. They actually give birth through this. Even more horrifying, approximately 60% of the cubs are actually suffocated and die attempting to leave the penis. Ouch. Dogs love squeaky toys not because of how playful it sounds but because after years of evolution, before killing their prey, which were mostly small animals like rabbits, they squealed in agony when being hunted down, thus letting the savage dog know that it was time for lunch. Good day. Chimpanzee penises have spikes. Found that out the hard way. The Cascadia subduction zone is long overdue for a rupture. When it does go, it is going to duct up. Everything west of I-5 from far northern California to southern British Columbia is going to have a really rough time. Seismologists and geologists are laying odds on this happening within the next 50 years. This region is woefully unprepared to deal with the initial earthquake and tsunami, or their aftermath. This going to make Katrina look like a day at the park. Koalas bears can give you chlamydia. Hold on before you get any wrong ideas here. They pass it by peeing on you. So if you get close to one of those cuddly bastards, it could end up very badly for you. So do not even think about touching those fur balls. Just finished the book Flyboys, recommended by fellow redditors. When 150,000 Japanese soldiers were left for dead in Papua New Guinea, they resorted to some kind of short straw decision making. The loser would always run. It's possible to accidentally kill yourself by cracking your neck like you do with your knuckles. Misfortune can cause a human to become of no will of theirs, less intelligent, less sane, and less of a good person. There was a guy, and he had a tapeworm, and the tapeworm had cancer, and the cancer metastatized, and the worm's cancer cells frolicked all through the guy's body and took root and grew tumors in his lungs. And the tumors weren't made of human cells, they were masses of worm flesh. Then he died. We are only aware of the serial killers who slipped up and made mistakes. If estimates are correct as to the level of people involved in child pornography, consumption of, rather than making of, there isn't enough space in prisons, even if they emptied them first, if they were all caught and convicted. Edit. This would still be true if we emptied all the prisons first. Someone that has been reading this thread probably won't wake up tomorrow. Russia is doing a drill involving 40 million people in preparation of nuclear war as we speak. An ancient warrior and devastating general in the 14th century, Timur, or Tamerlane, died at the age of 68. And inscribed on his tomb were the words, "When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble. And whoever disturbs my tomb will unleash an invader more terrible than I." Joseph Stalin ordered the tomb to be opened on the 20th of June, 1941. And exactly 2 days later, on the 22nd of June, 1941, Adolf Hitler launches Operation Barbarossa and begins to invade the Soviet Union. This legend is called Tamerlane's curse. I have no idea what's written in any of the terms and conditions I've agreed to. Apple may very well have the rights to my firstborn son. Apple may very well have the rights to my firstborn son. Not if you name him Jack. They won't be interested then. My mother tried to kill me and herself when I was 3 months old. My dad was off on his first ever 40-day deployment. The thing that stopped her was that I began to cry when she started to smother me. She ended up taking down her hanging noose from the closet afterward. I saved her. I'm 32 years old. And my father still doesn't know this happened. My mother privately admitted this to me out of the blue. Before dinner on my 26th birthday. We can be obliterated instantaneously from something in space that we couldn't possibly see coming. I find that comforting. Actually. Whale corpses are washing to shore with stomachs full of plastic debris, implying that they are starving to death on a full stomach. That there are people who have been kidnapped, arped, and murdered who will never be found. And that there are people being held against their own will as prisoners and sex slaves. This shit disturbs me daily. I ache for them. I'd give anything to be able to help them. Dead people can get goosebumps. I'm an aerospace materials engineer and this is my favorite horrifying fact for people scared of flying. The melting temperature of the turbine blades in a jet engine is around 1600 K. The temperature of the gas stream the blades operate in can exceed 1800 K. The only thing stopping the blades melting and causing catastrophic failure of the engine is a minuscule layer of cool air. In this context, cool is around 700-800 K, pumped out of tiny air holes to create a thermal boundary layer. TL. DR. The only thing between you and aircraft related death is less than 1 millimeter of air. That the ducking laundry never ends. Ever. The majority of malaria deaths are children under the age of 5 and pregnant women. In 2015 there were an estimated 438,000 malaria related deaths. Dolphins are rapists. Mao Zedong thought he knew it all after he became the ruler of China. He told the people to kill the birds because they were eating their crops. They killed millions of birds and that allowed insects to go unchecked and strip the fields. The resulting famine killed between 25 and 40 million people. During famines the Chinese would drown baby girls and sometimes sell their bodies which were hung up in the marketplace as monkey meat. We're either completely alone in the universe or we're not. That at any given moment a child is being uphead, tortured, and sold into sex slavery. And that people that would do that exist. We can't comprehend our own non-existence. I'm having trouble comprehending my own existence, much less my own non-existence. Donald Trump is running for president with Hillary Clinton as his opponent. At the time, 1939 to 1945, nearly 66% of the Jewish population in Europe was eliminated due to the Holocaust. Even scarier. Soylent Green as people. Some rattlesnakes hibernate by coiling together underground, leaving you with the possibility of digging into a giant ball of snakes during the winter. One day your parents picked you up, put you back down, and then never picked you back up again. Not horrifying, but more depressing. In the horse racing world, they will breed a thoroughbred and a second horse at the same time. Then when they both give birth, they give the newborn thoroughbred to horse number 2, and orphan foal number 2, and therefore leave it to die, so the thoroughbred can be bred again as soon as possible. Everything dies. Everything. Except rocks. They just erode into nothingness. Heard this last time. The average 20 years old has an expected lifespan of about 4,000 more weeks. Edit. Alright, you guys are right. Doing the math, that's about 76 years. So in reality you most likely have 1,500 or less weeks left. Even better. It doesn't matter if you're a mouse, a dog or an elephant. On average, the heart will beat about 1 billion times. And then will die. Humans are outliers. Their hearts will beat about 2 billion times. A former politician said House of Cards is one of the most accurate depictions of American politics he's ever seen. Superbugs are starting to be a problem. That we as a species have the means to feed and house everyone. And we choose not to. Until recently, an infant needed surgery. They did not get anesthetized, too dangerous. They just used a paralytic to stop the baby from squirming. But they felt everything and were fully awake, aware. How recent is recent? The number of people I killed in Iraq. Pointless death, pointless war. There was a point when my mum last lifted me up. There will be a point when I will have my very last sex with my girlfriend. There will be a point where I will be the next person who die. There will be a handshake which will be the very last. There will be a time when I will saw my best friend and never again. And I don't know when I reach any of these points. The idea of single player games is becoming less and less appealing to game designers. Games that are multiplayer with in-game microtransactions are becoming more and more the norm. These games are just so much more profitable than their single player counterparts. Example would be GTA Online. Profit exceeds nearly every other GTA game combined. Games will no longer be finished products. The consumer will be the beta testers. And won't receive discounts for it. Some are even receiving their funding from the consumers themselves before they even start to work on it from crowdfunding. Some recent games are amazing. But I can see the new norm being phone games based on microtransactions. For me, this is terrifying and it's the death of a hobby that I love. 1. A male zebra has a penis that spins round 360 degrees. Like a sort of fleshy blender. And if that wasn't bad enough. 2. When a male takes over a new herd, he pairs all the females with such ferocity using his spinning penis that it causes the miscarriage of any unborn baby zebras that might have been fathered by his predecessor. Zebras are baby murdering rapists. 50% of the animal population of our planet has disappeared in the last 40 years. A lot of lipsticks contain powdered indecent bodies, carmine, for coloring. Edit. And just who are you to judge when a body is indecent? That if you hit someone with your car in China and just injure them, you probably will pay their hospital bills for years. If you kill the person, you will pay an agreed amount of money to the family. So you are better off killing the person. I have seen footage of someone repeatedly backing over a young girl to make sure they are dead. Brutal. The CIA held a school of torture on US soil, and when they backed a rebel group they would bring back the interrogators and teach them how to torture properly. Some of these tactics used our pay with gangs of dogs, putting spiders in sex organs and more duct up tea. The fact that I am alive. But this life will not last. When you're really young you take it for granted. You say, of course I'm alive. There's no other option. Everyone else dies. But they're everybody else. I'm me. I am the one who views this world. This is my story. I'll last forever. But unfortunately, to quote Calvin's mom, we're all somebody else to somebody else. Underscore. And when you get to your late 20s it starts to hit you. The bones ache a little. The metabolism slows. And then you know that bitter fact. That yes, you too will die someday. You're not going to last. But there's a beauty in it. Knowing that something is impermanent means you must make the most of it while you have it. Our several most recent presidents all used illegal drugs in their youth, yet support laws that put people in prison for using illegal drugs. I guess they think their lives would be better if they had gotten caught and arrested. There are factories in China where the owners have under the table deals with local schools to bring their kids into work 1 stroke 2 a day. These kids don't know any better. They're just doing what their teachers tell them. They don't have any training to be in these factories, so accidents happen often around the big machinery. These kids are losing hands or entire arms in these accidents. The factories are making children's toys and are protected by the major toy company. The toy company employs major law firms to help them cover up the children who are being maimed to make these toys. So your kids' toys might have been handled by a child in China who ended up maimed for life. Confused at why they got hurt when all they did was listen to their teacher. Source. An old friend of mine was working for one of the law firms and was having a mental breakdown because they were tasked to find all the evidence, pictures etc. of maimed factory children and destroy them. Due to their colorblindness, puppies cannot see rainbows. There is clear evidence that the Jamestown colony survived the famine in 1609-1610 by resorting to cannibalism. And not just the killing and butchering of a girl about 14 years old, but also digging up graves to eat the corpses. This year's election season will cost approximately $5 billion. As Americans, we are apparently incapable of finding a cheaper way to discover the worst possible people for the job. Astronomer here, most likely we live in a universe where ultimately all the galaxies will spread too far from each other to be seen. Where the stars go out, the black holes evaporate, and matter itself ultimately disintegrates. Nothing left except a giant black void with nothing in it. Not even memories, as all the energy will be exhausted. Sweet dreams. If you're going to be murdered, statistically it is most likely to be by someone you have said I love you to. There are more jugglers in the world than polar bears. 93% of all humans are dead. The living are a minority. Not exactly horrifying, but still not exactly something people like thinking about. Edit to add. As you tweaking for just pointed out, it's 93.4%, not 99. That there is solar flare that has our name on it. We have no way to predict it, and if we were hit by another Carrington event level storm with our current reliance on technology, over 1 billion would die in the first 2 years after it. It would take us a decade in a first world nation like ours to rebuild. And we would lose 3/4 of all current active satellites in orbit. The world economy would implode and mass starvation and war would ensue. They estimate about 75 million inches the US dead of starvation in the first year. And almost nobody knows how close we came just a couple of years ago from completely eating it. Congress took up the task of seeing if interrupters could be added to our grid to prevent this from happening and protect us from a localized imp such as a terror attack. Power companies. Lobby. Money. You know the drill. My family broke off all contact with our cousin after he came out as gay. They pulled him out of the wills, threw away all the photos of him and kicked him out of their home. And they will do the same to me if they ever find out I am trans. We drink. We gamble. We take drugs abusively. Because of loneliness and emptiness. It's also good fun. There is a GMO called golden rice that pretty much is a lot of vitamin A. More than 500,000 plus kids die a year from vitamin A deficiency, and this could save all of those lives. The reason why it doesn't is because of anti-science people that think they're saving the world by saying GMOs are bad but in fact are killing thousands of kids. The world has the capability to feed 11 billion people. Yet of the 7 billion on Earth, 1 billion are starving. It's the single most infuriating statistic with regards to the human race. That burning human flesh smells exactly like bacon. At a small get-together at my house in high school, a girl tried to kill herself in my bathroom. She slit her arms deep and was losing a lot of blood and had second thoughts about death. My dumbass ex successfully hid it from me for a while because I would have called an ambulance. He tried to sew her arm shut with a sewing needle and fishing line. This made the problem worse and she bled more. So Tweedledee and Tweedledum thought up a more extreme solution. I heard some commotion and finally break away from the people who tried to keep me in my room. I smell a strong bacon smell and ask who was cooking. It turns out that my ex had heated a machete on my gas range until it was red hot and cauterized the cut in her arm. The truly ducked up part was that it smelled delicious. Treblinka, Belzec, and Sobibor were Nazi extermination camps so horrific that they made Auschwitz look like a daycare center. The Nazis did such a good job of covering them up that relatively few people even know they existed even today. There's a spooky skeleton inside you. That's somewhere out there. There's more than one person who could end my whole existence and it wouldn't faze them at all. That I am going to die. As each day passes, we are drawing closer and closer to our deaths. When people say I can't believe 2016 is almost already over, just stand back from that and think. It won't be long until people are saying 2017 is almost over. Then 2018. Then 2019. You might as well already be dead. We are all dead men walking. Remember how scary and lonely it was before your birth? Exactly. After your death, you'll be too dead to care. What you can do, though, is use that fear and live the most plentiful life you can. The murders, kidnapping, torture, child abuse, animal abuse, etc. that we see in movies and on TV pale in comparison to what actually happens every day around the world. Humans have a completely ducked up ability to be monsters. Don't be afraid of the dark or of a monster under your bed. Be afraid of your best friend. The guy down the block. The person you pass in a grocery store. They're the real things you need to worry about. In the 1850s there was a massive solar flare commonly called the Carrington event. The auroras were so bright they could be seen in the Caribbean and people could read the newspaper by the light in the north. The scary thing is that it caused lots of problems with telegraphs, the most advanced communication technology at the time. Besides reports of wires bursting into flames, there was apparently enough energy in the lines they could send messages to other stations without connecting their power supply. Voice records suggest that this may happen from time to time. So if telegraph wire shorted and burned at a few inches apart, what will happen to the processor on your cell phone with its circuits only 32 nm apart? The Earth's non-renewable supply of dank memes will run dry by 2069. May God have mercy on our souls. That if an underage girl sends you nudes without you asking and then you go to the police and explain that they were sent without you asking, they could care less and put you on the sex offender list. Same if you're underage and take pictures of yourself. You can get charged with possession of child pornography. I have a friend who's 15 and is on the sex offender list because he sent nudes to his boyfriend. The fact you can spend a lifetime with someone, loving them, taking care of them, growing old together, and one day they may forget you completely,